Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Pagan's Witchy Corner. I am blessed and joined by the wonderful Laura Tempest Zakroff. She is the author of Sigil Witchery, Weave the Liminal, and her newest book, which you guys just heard me talk about. This will be 2 weeks now, 2 weeks ago. Anatomy of the Witch. You guys heard me talk about how much I loved her book, and now she's going to bless us with wonderful information about the book, her inspirations, and all sorts of other cool stuff, hopefully. So, Laura, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Yes, hopefully we'll have some exciting things to talk about.
I think we definitely will. If you are a fan of Chaos and Shadow, you have heard our numerous and wonderful interviews with Laura over on Chaos and Shadow. If you are not a fan of Chaos and Shadow or you are new to it, go over to Chaos and Shadow and listen to those interviews as well, because all of them are spectacular. So go check them out. There's my shameless plug for the other show. Now, let's get started talking about Anatomy of the Witch. I have to say, as you've probably already listened to the podcast, I loved the book so much. It was so good. And if you guys haven't bought your copy, again, here's your shameless plug. Go buy a copy right now. You will not regret it, I promise. What was your inspiration to write this book?
Well, for me, in my personal practice, being embodied is a crucial element to not only tap into the spiritual, but see where the spiritual aligns with the physical. And having taught dance and taught metaphysics and art, all these different things for now going over 20 years, and get to see all sorts of folks, deal with these topics, and I realize that so many people are out of touch with their bodies, and it's missing such an important step in your practice, like how more empowering and exciting your practice can be once you are in touch with your body.
I would say that's definitely very true. And up until reading your book, it was one of those connections that I had not made in my own practice. So thank you for writing a book about that, because it's been a blessing in every possible way.
Yay! Doing the thing it's supposed to do. Yay!
Doing the thing it's supposed to do. Now, so many individuals that I have also talked to who have read your book said exactly the same thing. That this was a book that they needed, especially since COVID has hit. If you could pick one chapter from your book, what would you feel that chapter is, like, that has the strongest message, and why would you pick that one? If you can. I mean, there's too many, in my opinion, to choose from, but if you can't pick just one, that's totally okay.
Oh, geez. uh, um, I think if it was just going to send out like one chapter for folks to get them interested in it, it would be chapter 6, Loving the Magical Body.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've already early on introduced the concepts of the anatomy of the witch, but this is where we bypass so many of those quaint little sayings like your body is a temple, and things that just really don't dive into the depths that are necessary in order to connect with your body for all of its blessings and things to navigate, difficult navigating. The weird smells, the aches, the pains, the things that it can do, the things it can't do, and being very real about it, and also moving forward, not just physically, but also emotionally, mentally, and spiritually.
I would say that's definitely true. There were so many sections in that book, as I'm actually physically, or I'm sorry, book in that chapter, as I'm physically looking at my notes of them, that were so good, and just things that were very simplistic that you wouldn't associate with being magical. And that was one of the things that I took away so much of from this book, was there's so many little mundane things that we do on the daily that we can incorporate in our magical practices that we're just, a lot of witches just aren't. They think it has to be a
Absolutely.
big, huge ritual, and it doesn't have to be. It could be the easiest thing, like making a cup of coffee or washing your face or just having a moment to breathe. I think we forget that
Things that you're
often.
already doing on a daily basis. Like, why not tap into that for magic?
Exactly. And it was just, oh, it was so good. So, so good. My other thing that I absolutely loved in your book was the connection of the story of the tarot and
Mm.
what inspired you to connect the journey of the body and the story of the tarot.
Well, I am a huge tarot nerd, and that's a starting point, right? The thing, the thing that you're geeky about, it has such a huge impact on my practice. It was one of the first things as I was, really developing my path and practice as a young witch. Have somebody like hand me a tarot and say, here, figure this out. And starting to work with the stories and delve into it and explore it and see that the tarot is really about the journey of being a spirit embodied, right? What do we go through? What are our challenges? What are our successes? How do we get through these things? That's all present within the tarot. So when I sat down to, figure out, well, how do we progress through this body and how do we tap into it? Like the tarot was absolutely another really heady metaphor that I think so many people can tap into. So that was the natural. It's like it's storytelling. It's how do we identify in the process where are we in this journey? And I figured that would be a really helpful tool for many folks.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think probably my favorite one that you actually pulled from was the Empress. The Empress
Mm.
card just had such a moving message in your book with it. And it was, like I've said so many times, the book is phenomenal. And I'm going to continue saying it because it is probably now my number one book that I recommend to all practitioners. Followed by maybe the Liminal. So I feel like they should start with this book, get in tune with yourself, and then get in tune with the magic. Because, if we're not in tune with ourselves, I feel like it's just, oh, what's the word? Like that we're kind of shorting ourselves on our magical practice if we're not in tune with ourselves. At least that's my thoughts on it.
Yes, because we in society we are taught to disassociate from our bodies and so many unhealthy habits, a way of viewing our bodies, of not being divine, of not being spiritual, of putting presence or importance on like all of these other things that aren't rooted in where you live, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
this is, and we were talking especially in like traditional witchcraft, modern traditional witchcraft, of talking about spirits of place. Well, the place where your spirit resides is your body. Like that's your for number one place to start out from. In order to relate to anything else, it really helps to be present and honor that spirit and that body, like the realm, right? Your own personal landscape.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I feel like we're really tying. I've seen a lot of people that have really started to talk about how their journey within their own body is very much affected by what's going on in the world right now. Not only just with COVID, but I mean, the ocean was on fire. That was kind of a big
Yeah.
thing. And they're seeing such a moving thing of spirit right now. So your book was definitely something, in my opinion, that really hit home.
Oh, I am glad to hear that, and it definitely seems like this was it. I don't want to say I don't like the phrase "everything happens for a reason," but I feel like talking in Weave the Liminal about the tapestry, the patterns that we're weaving,
Mm-hmm.
that there's a point where the next pattern, the next motif, the next step is it becomes obvious, and so it felt like now's the time to deal with this, and definitely reflecting not just COVID, but uh, just just life in general. It's just amazing. Like, well, I guess this is the book I needed to write as well.
Yes, I completely agree with that. I do want to backtrack just very quickly to the topic of tarot. We have a lot of people who are very interested in divination that listen to the show. And if for those who are interested in getting started with tarot, what are some of your tips for people to get started with? And do you have a deck that you would recommend for beginners?
So we have how much time do we have?
We have as
Right.
much time as you need. You can talk forever if you'd like.
So with tarot, getting started, the first thing usually out of the gate is we run into that myth of do you have to be given a tarot? And it's like no, don't wait for that to happen. No, it is lovely to be given a tarot. Uh, being able to choose something that really is right for you is, I think, crucial. I mean, it's a relationship. There are thousands of decks out there, just not to make it daunting, but there are thousands of decks
Mm-hmm.
out there. And so I recommend is if you're able to, check out, I know it's hard to check out decks physically, but there are good shops that often have the sample decks that you can flip through. And then there's some really great, of course, with YouTube and Instagram, there are people who are doing flipping through decks. Indie deck review is a great resource. And just see, do you respond to the images? Do you feel like it's trying to talk to you in some way that you feel receptive to? Instead of being like, bitch, what's going on here? I mean, that could be a definitely handy deck, but something that you feel like, oh, I feel like there's a conversation happening here. And trying that out. Now, of course, it is addicting. I'll put that out.
Yes, it is. Me and my 37 of them, just, and
Yeah.
counting.
Yeah. I'm afraid to count because my partner is also obsessed with the tarot.
Oh,
Not
that's
that
amazing.
so it's like not that he reads too much with it. He loves studying it, but it's like, oh, this one's nice, and so we just collectively like tarot decks keep showing up in the house. I do recommend. Now I'm not a fan of the some of the harsh colors that you see in the classic Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Now there
Mhm.
has been the release of the more original with the soft muted tones, but most tarot decks are based on the Rider-Waite-Smith in some way. So getting familiar with the imagery that's there is a great way to be able to read almost any other deck. Now, of course, there are decks out there that are not based on it. They
Mhm.
might be based on other systems and some of the other Italian decks out there. Uh, but I find that the majority, I would say up to 80 to 90%, are based on that traditional Rider-Waite-Smith deck. So if you get familiar with the imagery and the stories that are being told and the meanings there, you can translate that into many other decks. Though there are many pretty decks out there that don't really tell stories or talk. So you'll find that out too. You're like, this is a really beautiful deck, and it just sits there and does nothing.
Mhm. I have a couple of decks that I just don't use, mainly because I bought them because they were pretty, and then realized that me and that deck don't have a relationship. So that deck and I just don't really talk, and it just sits on the shelf and effectively collects dust, to be fair. But I also have some other decks that are not set in Rider-Waite style at all. And some of them even have, different wording. So, like, the Page of Cups or, the Page and the Knight and all that. There's one that I think it's the Wild Unknown that does son, daughter, mother, and father instead of page, knight, queen,
Right.
and king. So very interesting the way that it is. And like you were saying, I very much agree that you should start with the basics and then move your way up, experiment, learn what decks you like and what you enjoy.
Yeah, look at it as like they're different languages, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like so you get the familiar, the base with the romance languages. If you understand one, you start to understand other ones. And of course, if you're drawn to a deck that you're just like, I can't help it, I have to start with this, and just do that. It's fine. And as for favorite decks, so the deck that I have done the majority of readings with for the last long time is Legend the Arthurian Tarot, which
Oh.
because at the time, particularly I was studying Arthurian romance. So I was reading La Morte d'Arthur and Sir Gawain and the Green Knight and the Fairy Queen, all of those books, and delving deep into the mythology. And so to coordinate that with the tarot and seeing another layer of those stories and myths in the deck, uh, I found was really helpful for reading for other people because you can say, oh, well, this is the Five of Cups. It means da 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 this. Or you can be like, well, this is a card of longing and lust. And here is the Arthurian romance. And people are like, oh, I get the story. Uh, so it's just another layer to that tool. But I just received a new deck. It's called the Lubanco Tarot
Okay.
uh, or Lubanco. And folks can check it out on, I think it's on Etsy. It's on, the artist is on Twitter too. And it is, let's say its description is a fully illustrated tarot exploring the surreal, the intense, the queer, and the divine. Like it's
Oh, that
delicious
sounds
right
gorgeous.
there.
Is that the one that you tweeted about several days ago?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
It's a gorgeous
yes.
deck, y'all. If you aren't following Laura on Twitter, we'll talk about her handles and all that later. But she did tweet about it. The deck is gorgeous. It is a bit pricey. I believe it's over $50, right? On Etsy. I want to say
Yes,
closer to 60.
it is a independently, it was kickstarted deck.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of limited that maybe their deck will get picked up by somebody else, and that can drop the price down.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend not to when I see like, well, I don't know so much about this deck, but I've watched the artists, and I found out about them after the Kickstarter. So I've been kind of not to say stalking them, but like really checking out their art. They're also a RISD alumni, so I'm like, well, I think that's it. I'm just gonna go for it, and I'm really glad I did, because as I flipped through it, every single card, I was like, yes, it's talking. It's so exciting. So that one's really cool. But for like another, if you want something that's queer and surreal and fun, the modern witch tarot. Um, is a really lovely take on the Rider-Waite Smith that it just kind of is a really fun update, and that one is available everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and probably like $30 or under, I think,
I
with the
think
book.
so. I want to say like 27. That's without looking it up, y'all. But yeah, it is available everywhere. It is also a gorgeous deck. And there's so many gorgeous decks. If those ones don't speak to you, like Laura said, there are literally thousands of decks to choose from.
There's more.
And there's more coming out every day. Go hunt down your personal tarot decks, everyone. And segueing a little bit from tarot, which is something you also incorporate tarot in, is your rituals on YouTube. They're wonderful. If you guys haven't checked those out, go check those out as well. For me, they're kind of like a really quick connection to the divine and my body, which is just so fun. And if anybody who is unfamiliar with them, can you tell them about your rituals? Like, what do they include? What can they expect from them? Give them all the info.
Sure. So at this point, there are 150 ritual workouts, and they are basically explorations of movement and magic. So they're fairly short, anywhere from about 8 to 15 minutes, depending on length, with a little bit of a warm up. And in each one, explore a different magical topic and how it relates to movement. So there are ones where we explore deities. There's ones where I pull a tarot card, and the workout is based on that, or an oracle card. Working with the lunar cycles, working with Sabbats and feast days, like all different types of things, down to different types of spellcraft, like this is cleansing, this is a banishing movement, and trying to make them also accessible for folks. So many of them can be modified to do as you're sitting down, possibly some of them laying down if you need to. So I even demonstrate a few of them sitting in a chair as well, so that regardless of your ability or how much you feel like moving in one day, that you can play with it and do it as your body requires.
Absolutely. And they're very gentle, at least on the body. I think there was only one that was, I want to say it was like the second or third ritual that it was a lot of arm work, but other than that, like it was really good either way. So they're very gentle on the body, which is very nice, especially for somebody like me with MS.
Yes, and yeah, one of my dance partners also has MS, so it's something I'm always thinking about. Uh, you know, some days you're gonna have a happy body, and some days you're like,
Mm-hmm.
your body's gonna like, fuck you.
Yep.
Right?
There's a lot of those days where, and with mine, it changes with the weather. Like we had terrible thunderstorms yesterday and I was feeling
Mm.
great all day. And then the thunderstorms hit and I'm like, I can't feel my hands now. Thanks, weather.
Well,
I appreciate that. So much fun.
all of the joy. And I do, for folks who are wondering, like, is it going to be too much or something? In the details for every episode, if it is something like, there's a couple of ones with shimmies where I'm like, this one is definitely going to be a little more intense. So reading the descriptions before you get started, or watching them the first time around and then doing them, is also really helpful.
That is very helpful. And there's so wonderful because it, like I said before, is a very quick connection. And it is like a little mini ritual, except to the fact that it's a ritual and you get to connect with your body, you get to connect with movement, you get to connect with breath, and you get to connect with whatever magic that is happening in that moment. They're just stunning. And I love that you included rituals in your book. They're so much fun as well.
I like to have exercises that, like, most of the time when I'm reading a book and I'm like, oh, am I actually going to do this thing?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And trying to construct things that are, again, accessible and people go, oh, this is not going to be it's a big ordeal to do it, right? But something that you're like, oh, I can sit down and try that. I got a couple minutes. Uh, and being able to create the ritual workouts, so sort of like it's a side-by-side tool,
Mm-hmm.
because I know it is hard to learn movement from a book. It's like, okay, my hand is supposed to be where, my feet are supposed to be where. And it's like, but if you can watch it, and so that's why I put the free resource up for folks to be able to like, oh, that's how that goes.
Mm-hmm. They're all wonderful. The journal prompts are also wonderful. Like I said in my review, I'm usually somebody that reads, all witchcraft books cover to cover before I go back and work through them. This one I got about halfway through, and the overwhelming compulsion to go get a notebook and start working through it was so strong. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna finish the book. I did not finish the book before I started working through it. I didn't. I actually did 2 or 3 of them and then I finished the book because it was so strong. And I have to attribute that to you because the writing was so well done that it was compulsive.
Oh, well, thank you.
I loved it so much. So talking about projects, do you have any projects in the works that we can look forward to? Anything that you can talk about? Obviously, some projects have to be hush hush. So if you can't talk about them, that's okay. But is there anything that you can tease to us about?
Yes. So I had just finished up. Sent in the second draft of the Anatomy of a Witch Oracle, which is an oracle I conceived about the same time that I was working on this book. And the idea was, having somewhat of an unconventional oracle that continued the theme of tapping into your body. Like, what can you use to, like, how do you speak to your own body to use that oracle to, dig a little deeper into your subconscious or to identify things that might be going on physically or metaphysically. And so that is I think it's 48. This is my problem. The Liminal Spirits is 42. I believe the Anatomy of Witch Oracle is 48 cards. And that's going into the systems. It goes into different magical states as well as body states, such as dreaming. And the magical states would be like cleansing and banishing and blessing and healing. And so that is going to be coming out from Llewellyn sometime, I think, in spring, summer of next year, so 2022.
I cannot wait for that. That sounds like the deck that everybody needs. I feel like there's a lot of decks, especially Oracle decks that are out there that are like, oh yeah, I can, tune into this. But sometimes you just need something that's like, you need to probably tune into this part of your body. You need to give this
Mm-hmm.
some love, give this some attention, focus right here. I think that that would be so awesome. I can't. And here we go. This is why tarot and oracle decks are addicting because you hear about a new one and then you're like, "Oh, well, there goes, 30 to 40 bucks of my life and I have to go own this one now. Thank you."
It's the sorry, not sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, not sorry, indeed. It's going to be amazing. So is that the only project you've got coming up or do you have others?
Excuse me. Um, the other thing I'm working on is kind of a follow up to Sigil Witchery, kind of, excuse me. Um, it is tentatively visual alchemy, which is delving deeper into art and magic, as well as helping folks dig a little deeper again into the method that I cover in Sigil Witchery, how to continue to make it more intuitive, how to implement it in different ways. And so that probably won't be out for quite a ways, quite a ways longer, though. Things they show up quickly, right? Like, oh, it's going to be so long for this book to come out. Now it's already been out almost 2 months. Like, wow. So that will be kind of a nice companion, and as well as this is something I'm really excited about. So it's nice to kind of keep switching gears for my brain to go like, okay, this is on the body, and all this is going to be about art, and yet they all still live in the same universe.
Well, now you're making my artist inside me literally like geek out. So, like you were talking about, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to own this right now. So, the artist in me is geeking out. I'm so excited for that. That sounds amazing. And it's funny when you came on to Chaos and Shadow to talk about Anatomy of the Witch coming out.
Mhm.
That seems like it was yesterday. Like it didn't, like by the time the book came out, I almost actually missed the launch date for it because I was like, "Oh, hey. Oh, that's already here. Well, okay, we're going to go get this book right now because I had forgotten that it was launch day." And it snuck up on me in a good way. It was a sneaky thing. So that's probably going to be what happens with all of Laura's other works that are coming out eventually. They're going to sneak up on you and you're not even going to realize that the time has already passed because, that's how time works these days.
What is time?
What is time? I think we lost the concept of time when the pandemic hit.
We've given up. It's definitely no longer linear. It is definitely spiral and cross-hatched and
Yep.
edited together.
So you have lots of classes and cool stuff that you teach. Where can people go to find you to stay up to date on your classes, your events, your project, your life, all of the above?
So the best place is my website, lauratempestzakroff.com. That's where I have the class schedule and events and such, and you can get links. It's like those. It's the doorway. It's the doorway to other websites and other dimensions, as well as probably my Instagram. I'm pretty active on there. That's the alchemy.arts. That's a good place to find things out. And there's also a link tree on there, which will get you to other things.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be awesome. I definitely love all of the events that we've gotten to attend and work with you for. Obviously there was the Wonderful Witches Sabbath last year, the Waking Persephone that was earlier this year, and there's going to be lots of other events that are hopefully coming up in the future. So you guys go
Mhm.
follow Laura, get in touch with her website. You also have a Patreon as well, don't you?
Oh, yes. I forget all the things I have. So we have Patreon, where folks can see all the art in progress. So if you're curious about that Oracle deck, you can actually go and see all the art for it. My patrons got to see that first. And then we also have weekly Zoom sessions. Like right now, we're diving into Anatomy of a Witch. So we're going
Oh,
through it
wow.
by chapter, kind of just discussing and seeing how people feel and what they thought if they've been through it and all that kind of fun stuff. And so that's what we're doing right now.
So go subscribe to her Patreon, go follow her on Instagram, go check out her website. You can also find all of her art on her website that you can buy your own copies of. I know you have lots of prints and stuff available. Get your copy of Anatomy of the Witch, Weave the Liminal Sigilry, and all of her other amazing works. The Liminal, what, Liminal Oracle? I'm losing the title. Liminal Spirits,
So many
thank you. I
things.
was like, there's another word there that I'm forgetting.
Words are
Which
hard
is
to
also
find.
another beautiful Oracle deck. So, guys, go check that out. And Laura, do you have any other imparting wisdom that you want to tell the audience before we call it a day?
Oh, well, remember to take a breath, and where you are on your path right now is where you are. It doesn't have to be compared to anybody else's. This is a journey. So just enjoy and take some time to appreciate it, because time, what is time?
Time is not something that should be ever compared when it comes to the witchcraft path because you should just go with it and let it take you where it takes you and enjoy it. Well, Laura,
Absolutely.
thank you so much for being here. You have been a wonderful guest as always. We always love having you on all of the shows. And again, everyone, go buy Laura's books. This is your witchy PSA. Go buy her books. You need them in your life. Trust me, you do. And thank you for being here, and we will see you guys all next week.
Thanks so much for having me.
Bye-bye.